Good day, everyone. Now we have our lesson about consecration or obedience. So, as you know, evangelism is not only about speaking the gospel, but about living it out in our daily lives. So, a consecrated believer, one who has fully surrendered to God, becomes a powerful witness through both words and actions. Consecration means total surrender to God's will and choosing to obey Him. Bob else is our most priority. No, so this is the foundation of effective evangelism because only a life aligned with Christ can truly reflect His love to others. Si Jesus mismo minodol niyang obedience to the Father in every aspect of His ministry. He declared in John chapter 4 verse 34, John 4 verse 34, my food is to do the will of Him who sent me and to finish His work. So evangelism flows naturally from consecrated lives because obedience to Christ includes obeying His command to make disciples of all nations. We know that from Matthew chapter 28 verses 18 to 20. So now, what is the meaning of consecration? Consecration means to set apart one's life fully for God's purposes. Sabi ng Romans 12 verse 1, it describes believers as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable to God, which is our reasonable act of worship. So to be consecrated is to belong, or to be consecrated is to belong completely to God with no divided loyalties. And Jesus Himself demonstrated consecration through His perfect submission to the Father's will. Diba in Luke chapter 9 verse 23, He also calls His disciples to deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow Him. So this means that consecration is not just a one-time decision, but a daily commitment to walk in obedience. So now, obedience, let's talk about obedience as mark of a disciple. Obedience is the visible proof of consecration. When Jesus called His disciples, they left their nets, packs, boots, and even families to follow Him. So their obedience was immediate and total. So true discipleship cannot exist without obedience because following Christ requires submitting to His authority and commands. And in Mark chapter 6 verse 7 to 13, Jesus sent out His disciples to preach, heal, and cast out demons. They obeyed without hesitation, trusting in His instructions. So these examples shows that disciples involves both learning from Jesus and actively obeying His mission commands. So let's talk about consecration and mission of evangelism. So a consecrated life naturally leads to an evangelistic lifestyle. In Luke 19 verse 10, it reveals Jesus' mission. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. When believers are fully surrendered, they take part in this same mission. Evangelism becomes a daily expression of obedience, not just a church program. So the early church grew rapidly because the believers lived in obedience to Christ. Isipin niyo yun, the early church grew rapidly because the believers, hindi sinabing the pastor lang or the leaders lang. Every believers lived in obedience to Christ. In Acts chapter 2 verse 47, it records that the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Their obedience to teaching, fellowship, the breaking of bread, and prayer overflowed into powerful evangelism. Today, our obedience should also translate into sharing Christ in workplaces, schools, and communities. Now, let's move on to cost and reward of consecration. Consecration involves cost. Jesus said in Matthew 16:24 to 25 that following Him means denying oneself, taking up the cross, and losing one's life for His sake. These include surrendering ambitions, comforts, and sometimes even reputation or safety. A consecrated life demands sacrifice. However, the rewards far outweigh the cost. Consecration brings joy, peace, and fruitfulness in God's mission. The disciples, though persecuted, they experienced the joy of seeing the gospel spread throughout the world. The true life is found when we give ourselves fully to Christ's call. Now, I want you to take a personal assessment and i-identify natin baka may mga areas pa sa ating buhay na hindi natin fully sinosurrender sa Panginoong Jesus. Because consecration begins in the heart but must be lived out in daily choices. May mga time na sinasabi natin, sinuko na natin ang buhay natin sa Panginoong Jesus. Pero may mga parte pa rin sa buhay natin na ayaw natin ipagalaw, ayaw natin pakailaman ng Diyos. Alamin natin yon ngayong araw, ngayong oras na ito. And as part of this recorded discussion, now I want to conclude this topic before I give you the activity. So remember that consecration is the heart of evangelism. Ibig sabihin, kapag sinuko na natin yung buhay natin sa Panginoon, set apart na tayo. And once na tayo is set apart, gagawin natin yung kalooban ng Diyos sa ating buhay. At isa sa pinakaklaro na kalooban ng Diyos sa ating buhay, hindi mo na kailangan tanungin, hindi mo na kailangan maguluhan pa. Isa sa pinakaklarong kalooban ng Diyos sa ating buhay ay ibahagi ang kanyang salita na nagbibigay ng buhay na walang hanggan. So without full obedience to God, our witness becomes weak and inconsistent. A consecrated believer reflects the message of the gospel, not only in words, but in character and actions. Evangelism is not just a program, but a lifestyle that flows from a surrendered heart. Si Jesus mismo minodel niya yung complete obedience sa Father, and as His followers, we are called to do the same. When the church lives in consecration, in obedience, it becomes a powerful evangelizing community. So a consecrated church, an obedient church, is an evangelizing church. And through it, God accomplishes His mission in the world. Now, your assignment is you're going to share the gospel and pray for someone. So our objective is this assignment is for you to practice obedience to Christ's command, to share the good news. So your responsibility is not to convince or convert, but to a faithful your responsibility is to faithfully present the gospel message and to pray for the person you shared with. So whether or not they decided to accept Jesus Christ at that moment, you have to pray for that person. So first, you pray. Ask God to show you one person you can share the gospel with this week. May it be a classmate, a friend, a family member, neighbor, or co-worker, or yung mga newcomer nyo sa church this coming Sunday. Baka may mga newcomer kayo. Share the gospel. Use a simple method. Okay, baka meron na kayong mga ginagamit sa church. Siyempre, kamustahin nyo muna. Introduce yourself. And share the gospel to them. And you can pray after. So, explain God's love, the problem of sin, Christ's solution, which is His death and resurrection, and then the response na pwede natin gawin to have faith in Jesus. And then pray for that person. If they accept Jesus, thank God and pray for their growth. If they do not, still pray for God to continue working in their heart. So, after that, write a short reflection report. Like 1 page is enough. It includes who you shared with. First name only, wag nyo na ilagay yung apelido for privacy purpose. How you started the conversation. How the person responded. Interested ba siya? Nag-ask siya ng question. Unsure siya, resistant, or accepted. Kahit ano. Pwede nyo ilagay dyan. So, what you learned about sharing the gospel and anong naramdaman nyo. And, So, that's it. Yun lang. Pwede rin mag-picture kayo kung papayag siya. Kung ayaw naman, okay lang walang picture.
So that's it. Thank you and God bless.